Jobs will go, about half of them at C&G. Here's our business editor, Robert Peston, on the latest victim of the banking crisis.
Cheltenham and Gloucester, a high street fixture in mortgages and savings until now. The branches are closing down, chopped in this year of the credit crunch by its owner, Lloyds. This is where C&G started in the Victorian era. And this is C&G this morning, a manager worried following leaks that bad news was on the way.
You never know today.
And Gloucester people resigned to the demise of 164 branches.
Nothing surprises me with this economic climate at the moment where everybody's changing names.
We're losing a lot, aren't we? And where does it end? Identity means a lot.
A big name like that disappearing, can't understand why. Is it Lloyds has made the decision? Yeah, well, saving money again. That's what it's all about today, unfortunately.
It's normal business hours, but this branch of Cheltenham and Gloucester is shut because its staff are being told what it means for them that Lloyds is closing them down. Now, obviously, we all feel enormous sympathy for anybody who loses their jobs, particularly in the current economic climate. But we've also got to remember that we have a big stake as taxpayers in Lloyds, and therefore we have an interest in whether Lloyds, the owner of Cheltenham and Gloucester, makes a profit.
These are tough economic conditions right now for most companies. We have to have a business that reflects those conditions. We have to have a business that is right for the future. That is the best form of investment, both for our colleagues and for our customers, and indeed for the taxpayer.
Lloyds is a super-sized bank with a bad case of indigestion. It was already enormous, having expanded first by buying, obviously, TSB, and also Cheltenham and Gloucester and Scottish Widows. But then it pumped itself up even more by buying HBOS, which brought with it Bank of Scotland, Halifax, Birmingham Midshires and Intelligent Finance. But HBOS also brought with it huge losses on reckless loans it had made. And because of its woes, we taxpayers bailed it out last autumn.
What kind of a world are we living in where, despite government money, these people can continue to run the banks and make presumably even more profits by getting shut and using the present economic circumstances to justify getting shut of thousands of workers?
Lloyds feels obliged to cut costs to reduce the £3.5 billion loss that taxpayers are currently carrying on our 43% stake in the bank. But most will say that the thousands of job losses Lloyds has announced since being bailed out is hardly a pearl of an investment for the nation.
Mortgages from Cheltenham and Gloucester. We're run.
And Robert is with me now. Robert, that was bad news for C&G workers, but I wonder if you could look at the wider picture for the banking sector.
Well, George, this may seem slightly odd to the thousands and thousands of people who are losing their jobs in the banking industry at the moment, but there is evidence that we're over the worst. For example, in the bits of banks that serve big companies, that trade in things like foreign exchange, actually, they're making very substantial profits again at the moment. And earlier this week, Lloyds itself repaid more than £2 billion of the money that we as taxpayers put into it to rescue it. So there are signs on the margin that things aren't quite as bad. That said, Lloyds and other banks are incurring very substantial losses on the reckless loans they made during the boom years, and those losses are still coming in. Interestingly, the governor of the bank, the deputy governor, of the Bank of England today, did warn that he remains concerned that the banks are still not ready to lend enough to give some support to an economic recovery. So it isn't quite yet business as usual, either for the economy or the banks.
So a mixed picture. Robert, thank you very much. A nursery in Plymouth has closed while police question a 39-year-old female employee